talking about managing meltdowns after school and how to help your child transition from school to home now that they are all back to school. Um, Again, today we're going to talk about how to manage the meltdowns, the tantrums, and the emotional crashes that happen after school. It's a very common experience for children with developmental disabilities, especially at the beginning of the school year. Many parents feel like things fall kind of apart the moment that the child walks through the door coming back from school. One minute, basically, the teacher says they had a great day, and the next, they're melting down at home for XY reason, yelling, refusing to do anything, or shutting down completely. It's confusing, it's exhausting, and it sometimes feels kind of personal for parents. You're not alone. This is actually, again, a very common occurrence and it has a name. It's called the after school restraint collapse. It's very, very common, especially during transitions, like at the start of the school year. When I talk to parents experiencing this challenge of behaviors after school, they're often confused because they think that if the child was fine at school, they should be fine at home. But the thing is that they held it together all day. Home is kind of their safe space, so they go into the home and they let go. They're not necessarily acting out. It's kind of like when you come back home from work and you're tired and hungry and you have a lot of things to do and you snap at your spouse. In their eyes, for no apparent good reason, other than the fact that you had a long day. It's the same thing for kids. When kids are at school, they are at work. That's their full time job. So when they come home, they feel safe. They just kind of like let it all out. It's important to not get caught in the trap of wanting to stop the meltdown or the tantrum immediately. The goal isn't necessarily to stop it right there in the moment. The goal is to understand what's behind it so you can support your child through it and then they can learn to regulate faster over time. Okay? So, let's go into why the behavior happens in the first place. What is behind this behavior of letting it all out once I get home from school? When your child is at school, especially if they're neurodivergent, they are constantly working hard, holding their emotions in, following expectations, managing sensory input, trying to fit in, all while masking how overwhelmed they feel. This is a natural response. They're in a new environment, new teachers, new friends. They are assessing their own place in that environment. So, more than likely, they're keeping the overwhelm to themselves. That takes a huge emotional toll. By the time they get home, they're toasted and they tend to let their guard down because home is their release. So they just let it all out. So what you're seeing isn't necessarily bad behavior, stubbornness, manipulation, or just pure wanting to tantrum. It is actually the emotional cost of the effort throughout their entire day. And that's especially true at the start of the school year when routines are new, when they are learning all of these things. Expectations are unclear because they're just learning those expectations. And their nervous system is overwhelmed with all this sensory stimulation. So that is why that happens, why those meltdowns, why that happens in the first place. That's what's underneath those behavioral observations that we get to see. Now, next, I'm going to give you some of the strategies that you can implement to make after school time easier for both you and your child. Strategy number one is to build in decompression time, creating 20 to 30 minutes of quiet, screen free time immediately after school. No demands, no major activities, just chill. You can let them choose calming activities like swinging, reading, music, drawing, water play, and let them do it alone if they need to. The benefit of this is that it helps your child reset their nervous system by reducing stimulation. So quiet, not a lot of cognitive engagement, just chill. If you just allow this decompression time, you will see fewer meltdowns and easier transitions into the evening routine because their nervous system gets to reset. Strategy number two is to give them a balanced snack immediately after school. This is a snack with protein, healthy fats, and carbs, something like apple slices with peanut butter. Having a healthy snack replenishes depleted energy in the body and the brain, and it balances blood sugar, improving their mood. Of course, this is not medical advice, consult with your doctor, but generally speaking, a good healthy snack helps the body feel better and improve mood overall. When your body feels better and you have the energy that you need to continue on with your day, this reduces irritability and increases cooperation after school. Strategy number three is going to be to stick to a predictable after school routine. So you can set up a simple sequence of that routine. You can say quiet time, snack, playtime, homework, dinner, bedtime, something like that. Super simple. Predictability creates safety. When kids know what's coming next, they feel more relaxed, and it also helps you gain credibility with your child when you follow through with those routines, making it easier over time once they learn that routine. When they have this routine and it's predictable and they feel safe and they know exactly what is coming, there's no surprises, this reduces anxiety and resistance in your child, and it helps them feel more in control, which in turn allows them to not have to feel like they have to fight you or for that control. For this, you can use simple visuals like a checklist or something. Again, it doesn't have to be fancy, super simple on a sheet of paper. You can just write it down, quiet time, snack, what that routine looks like so that they know what to expect next. Strategy number four is to connect instead of correct. Instead of saying to your child, stop crying or stop doing that, you're this, you are that, tell them, you've had a big day. I understand. I'm here for you. The more that you stay calm and the more that you validate those emotions, the more that offers a safe space for them to feel those emotions. This helps their nervous system get more stable because they don't fear feeling that emotion. You can also offer regulation strategies like deep breathing, squeezes, or hugging. But if they're not into that, just showing them that you're calm and your quiet presence will make a big difference. Again, because that allows them to feel safe and to know that those emotions are okay to feel. They're going to be okay. They're not going to die. Everything is going to be okay. So this will lead to them being able to recover faster for that from that emotional like burn down state that they are in, and they will build more emotional resilience over time, making it easier as you guys go along. Strategy number five is to limit after school demands initially. Don't ask too many questions or jump into chores or homework right away. Parents are the doers, right? They want to, we want to know how their day was, what happened at school. We want to know everything about that. We know we need to get X, Y, and Z done. But this behavior on your part as the parent can actually backfire because it leads to even more overwhelm during a time in which emotional decompression is necessary. They need that space to recover, to process, to do whatever they need to do to be back at baseline. So, what I recommend is instead of saying, how was your day? Tell me all about it. Save it for dinner or for before time. Like, create a time in which those questions can be answered, and then follow that schedule, like I mentioned in the previous strategy. If you initially tone down your demands for that, allow to that transition to happen and get your child used to it, your child is more likely to cooperate once they feel calm and once they feel connected with you. So So, the five strategies. Now, let's go over some of the top mistakes to avoid. Mistake number one is jumping right into homework or chores immediately after school. Not allowing that decompression time before those expectations occur is actually going to increase their emotional overload, their overwhelm, and it's more likely that you will get those meltdowns and behaviors. So avoid jumping into it right away. Instead, allow those 20 to 30 minutes of decompression time. Mistake number two is actually to take it personal. Remember that the meltdown, the tantrum, all of those behaviors that you are seeing are not about you and they're not about your child being bad, stubborn, manipulative. It's a sign that they are tired, that they feel safe in your home to let it go. So we just have to direct them in a more appropriate way and a healthier way to go about coping with those emotions. Mistake number three is using screens as a coping tool or as a form of getting the behavior to stop. Screens are tempting because they end meltdowns or tantrums quickly. But what happens with screens is that they can overstimulate instead of actually regulate. So, what you want to do instead is choose friendly, sensory friendly activities that are quiet, like I mentioned, music, drawing, Play Doh, water play, anything that just calms the body down as opposed to amp it up. So with that, I will do a quick recap. Meltdowns after school are normal. They are not failure on your end or your child being stubborn. They're normal. Your child is not trying to make your life harder. They're just decompressing and letting go at that time from all of the emotional things that they took during their day. So support starts with you by giving them a routine, a snack, decompression, connection, reducing your demands, and really focusing on creating a calm and consistent low pressure afternoons that they feel that they can regulate and feel safer in that environment. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
Yeah, so we got a couple questions that came in. The first one I want to address is a question from a parent asking, how do you typically explain these after school behaviors to your partner or other family members who do take it personally and think the behavior means that we're doing something wrong at home?
That is a great question. I think that starting with some type of explanation, like I just did, about what is happening, a lot of the times, in my experience, adults tend to relate to situations that are related to them. So, giving them an example of, like, hey, remember yesterday when you came home after a long meeting at work and your boss said this, and that, and you felt kind of irritated and you snapped at me. That's you basically just coming home and feeling safe about it and doing that. So that's exactly what the kid is doing. So relating, using examples of day to day life with other adults who may not understand your child and how it relates to them is a very good strategy to get other people on board.
Gotcha. And then another one came in regarding the quiet time. So my child resists quiet time and usually will just complain that they're bored, that there's no screen. What do you suggest to do in those circumstances? I know that you mentioned to save quiet time, but how do you handle that?
Yeah, that is a great question. Quiet time does not necessarily need to mean boring. It just means quiet in the sense of, like, we are not overstimulating the body. So, running, jumping, anything like that, that is like overly amping. What you can do for those kiddos who maybe are just more insistent on an I1 screen or are just like amped up more is try to engage with them. It sounds like if you make it less boring, if you get the activity to be interesting to them, they might engage. So, what I would recommend is that you actually participate in the activity. Say it's drawing, and they don't like drawing, but maybe they really like SpongeBob. So, get a really cool SpongeBob book and then engage with them and then make funny sounds. As long as the body is kept calm and regulated, then any activity would do. So engage with them and make it interesting, and I bet your child will engage with you.
Gotcha. Another parent asked how much does food really impact behavior? And are you open to sharing, what foods to avoid giving to children to impact behavior?
Yeah, for sure. Generally speaking, again, this is not medical advice. This is just from my experience and what I've observed with many of the clients that I've worked with. And also, I like to think from a perspective of what does a human body need, right? Personally, when I am at work and I am going, at some point I feel like, man, I kind of like need something to eat to feel like I'm sharp again. I'm sure all of us have felt that before. So it's especially important to pay attention to that, to children with developmental disabilities who may not have the communication skills or the ability to detect those things in their body. So if it happens to the majority of us, it is safe to assume that it is going to happen to them, that they need that fuel to continue to keep going. So it's safe again to assume that a balanced like snack, or that if they're irritable, a good place to look at is the basic needs: food, thirst, calm regulation. So, generally speaking, food definitely affects our mood. And also, it has been studied in research and the literature that food has an effect on our mood. The second part to your question is what foods to avoid. Generally speaking, anything that you would avoid for a neurotypical person, like excessive sugar, excessive carbs, super fried food, all of that, what that does to your blood sugar, it's actually spikes it, and then you crash. So when you have coffee, french fries, the majority of us will feel kind of like this spike and then a huge crash. After lunch, we all want to go to sleep. That's that crash. So you want to avoid those foods that make it more likely that your child will feel this crash, because they'll be more irritable, then they'll usually see more tantrums, more meltdowns.
Hmm. A parent asked, do these techniques work for ourselves too?
I probably would have to guess yes. Personally, I use them.
um, Let me see. There's a couple duplicates questions being asked, so let me make sure I get you a new one. Um, is it really okay to delay homework and chores after school? What if my child typically refuses to do them later?
It is totally okay to delay homework. If that it, you, I would think about the trade-off. What's the trade-off? If I try to push homework right now, is it going to be delayed because the child is going to fight me, because he or she is going to melt down because they're going to tantrum? So the homework is being delayed regardless, unless you're able to come home and tell your child, here, do your homework, and they do it just fine. You are delaying the homework regardless by engaging in all of that struggle that goes along with getting them started. Versus if you delay it and you allow that space for them to decompress, then they're more likely to cooperate and get it done. I would have to guess that if they are refusing homework later in the day, is because it intervenes with some type of activity that is highly preferred to them, like a screen time, like playtime. So I would just restructure your routine so that that super interesting activity comes right after homework. Like, yes, you can have your iPad as soon as you're done with your homework. You can go play with your friends outside as soon as you're done with your homework, and then delay that homework time for whatever time that is appropriate after that decompression time.
Gotcha. We have another question that came in. I know you mentioned to not use screens to calm your child after school. My child typically fights unless they get the screen. What's a better way to help them settle and to transition from screen time to something else when they really prefer it?
Mm-hmm. I would start at the trigger of them fighting for that screen. So, say, I don't know if you pick them up, if they come home from school and just you receive them at home, but if as soon as they walk in, they just get the iPad, that's where I would start intervening, and then just introduce something else. The iPad or walking into the home is the trigger to I want iPad. So you want to stop that trigger right there and then. Present it by presenting a different activity, or maybe you can tell them something like, I know you want your iPad, you can have it, but first do 2 minutes of Play-Doh. First 2 minutes of drawing, then the iPad. Make it super short, the requirement of um, that you're asking them to engage in that different activity or to do that different activity. Make it short, make it a minute or two, and then reward them for doing that activity by giving them the iPad. Over time, you're going to be able to increase that duration of time of the new activity because they know that the iPad will come. But what that does is that it actually helps you introduce an activity that actually regulates their body.
Gotcha. Awesome. Um, Sometimes my child choose if I feel like my child chooses to act out at home because if we were to go somewhere else outside in public after school, we don't get any behaviors. How would you explain why that happens and what we can do instead? Because obviously we don't want them to act out at home.
Yeah, that is a great question. It is very similar to that after school, like restraint collapse. That's what it's called, where we tend to keep all of our stuff together when we are out in public, when we are out with people, and then when we get home, we let it all go. This happens to you and I all the time too. When you go out to, say, a double date with friends of yours and your spouse, and you guys keep it together all night, and then when you get home maybe you argue about something that happened, but while you are in public you're keeping it together because you don't want to show the world that part of you guys, right? It's kind of like the same thing. They keep it together because they know that in those circumstances they have that restraint, but when they get home they feel safe and they let it go. That is why that happens. It's just their safe place. Their safe place to let it go at home. Now, what to do to avoid those behaviors at home, because of course you don't want those behaviors at home, is to create that space where you support that child during that transition. And that transition is going from the outside and putting it together to letting it all go, understanding that it's not a choice that they have, it's not something that they're doing purposefully, and it is something that their body and their brain is doing because that's how they feel, and they don't have the skills yet to regulate themselves. So we need to support that, to help them regulate, to help them decompress, and to help them understand what they're feeling. The way we do that is what I mentioned: allow those decompression time. Instead of correcting them and telling them like stop and fueling this red energy, you want to be calm and allow that space. Let them know, I understand you feel frustrated, I'm here, let me know what you need. Staying calm is a very, very important part of this process.
Awesome, awesome. Well, that's the last one that we got for today. Thank you so much, Ellie.
Yeah, I'll see you guys next week.